In the sleepy town of Oakwood, Alabama, the summer sun of 2025 hung low, casting a golden haze over the winding backroads. Sarah Thompson, a nurse at the local VA hospital, drove her weathered sedan along County Road 17, her mind heavy with the day's work comforting a dying veteran whose stories of valor still echoed in her ears. The two-lane road stretched ahead, flanked by towering pines and the occasional flicker of deer in the underbrush. Her eyes caught a glint of trouble ahead. A beat-up pickup truck parked crookedly on the gravel shoulder, its hood propped open. A faint wisp of what looked like steam curling into the air. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of tending to others, urged her to stop. "Could be someone in trouble," she murmured, glancing in her rearview mirror before easing her car to a halt about 30 feet behind the truck. She slipped her phone into her scrub pocket, the weight of it reassuring, and stepped out, her sneakers crunching on the gravel. "Hello, does anyone need help?" she called, her voice steady but cautious. Silence answered, thick and unnatural, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas. The hairs on her neck prickled as she took a step closer, noticing the steam was just dust settling from the truck's recent arrival. Before she could retreat, 4 figures emerged from the pines, their leather vests emblazoned with the snarling wolf logo of the Iron Ridge Outlaws, a local gang known for their venomous hatred. Sarah's heart pounded as a 5th man stepped from behind the truck, his smirk revealing a glint of gold in his teeth. "Look who's playing Good Samaritan," he sneered, spitting into the dirt. Sarah raised her hands, backing toward her car. "I don't want trouble. I'm leaving." The leader, a wiry man with a shaved head and a scar slicing his eyebrow, stepped closer. "You don't get to decide that, sweetheart. Not here." His eyes burned with a malice that made her stomach churn. A passing car slowed its driver, glancing at the scene, but fear wore indifference sent it speeding away. Sarah's fingers brushed the medical alert bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her husband, Jack, a Delta Force veteran who'd insisted she wear it. She'd teased him about his overprotectiveness, but now, as the men closed in, she pressed the hidden button, praying its signal would pierce the dense forest. The outlaws grabbed her, their rough hands bruising her arms as they dragged her into the woods, her sneakers skidding against roots and rocks. "This'll teach you to stay where you belong," the scarred leader growled, shoving her against a massive oak tree, its gnarled bark biting into her back. They bound her wrists with zip ties, the plastic cutting into her skin, and wrapped a coarse rope around her torso, pinning her to the trunk so tightly she could barely breathe. Sarah fought to keep her composure, her nurse's training kicking in to manage the panic clawing at her chest. "I'm a nurse," she gasped, her voice steady despite the pain. "I help people, maybe even your families." The leader backhanded her, the sting blooming across her cheek. "Keep your mouth shut." Another punched her ribs, the blow precise to avoid her face, their intent clear, to hurt her without leaving obvious marks. Sarah bit her lip, tasting blood, refusing to cry out. Between blows, she focused on the bracelet, its tiny red light blinking faintly, a lifeline to Jack. "You'll stay here till you learn," the leader taunted, his breath hot against her face. "No one's coming for you." They laughed as they retreated, the roar of their motorcycles fading into the distance. Leaving Sarah alone in the gathering dusk, the oak's branches casting jagged shadows across her bruised body. Sarah's breaths came shallow, each one a struggle against the ropes. The forest was silent, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig, amplifying her isolation. She whispered prayers to stay conscious, her lips cracked and dry. Blood trickled from her wrists, the zip ties rubbing them raw, and sweat stung the abrasions on her back, where the bark had torn her scrubs. Her mind clung to Jack's calm under pressure, his unyielding resolve forged in combat zones. 20 miles away, Jack Thompson was in their garage, organizing his tools with military precision when his phone buzzed with an alert. The screen flashed Sarah's GPS coordinates deep in the logging roads outside Oakwood. His blood ran cold, but his movements were instant, automatic. He grabbed his go bag packed with essentials from his Delta Force. Dazan sprinted to his truck, the engine roaring as he peeled out of the driveway. The tires chewed gravel as he sped toward the coordinates, his mind racing through scenarios. But his hands steady on the wheel. Years of training had taught him to transform fear into focus, to see every detail as a tactical advantage. He spotted the pickup truck on the shoulder, its hood still up, engine cold, a clear setup. Nearby, Sarah's sedan sat abandoned, a single drop of blood on the driver's door handle, catching the fading light. Jack's jaw tightened as he followed scuff marks and broken branches into the woods. Moving like a ghost, despite his 6-foot frame, each step deliberate. Avoiding anything that might snap underfoot. The forest thickened, but the signs were unmistakable. Drag marks, a torn scrap of Sarah's scrubs caught on a thorn, more blood drops glistening on leaves. Then he heard her faint, steady prayer cutting through the trees. Jack emerged into a small clearing where Sarah hung against the oak. Her dark skin mottled with bruises, her scrubs torn at the shoulder. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice low to avoid startling her. Her eyes fluttered open, relief flooding them. "Jack!" Her voice was hoarse, barely audible. He drew his tactical knife and sliced through the zip ties and ropes, catching her. As she slumped forward, her legs trembling from hours of strain. "I've got you," he murmured, his touch gentle despite the rage boiling in his chest. He scanned her injuries, bruises on her arms and ribs, rope burns on her wrists, a swelling welt on her cheek. The distant rumble of motorcycles snapped. His attention back, Sarah's eyes widened. "They're coming back." Jack's jaw set. "Astillo?" He helped her slide behind the oak's massive trunk, handing her a water bottle from his bag. 3 outlaws burst into the clearing, their laughter cutting off as they saw the cut ropes dangling from the tree. "What the hell?" one barked. Reaching for a pistol, Jack was already in motion, a blur of controlled violence. He grabbed the first biker's wrist, twisting it until the gun dropped, then drove his elbow into the man's temple, dropping him instantly. The second swung a chain, but Jack ducked under it, using the man's momentum to slam him face first into the oak, the impact echoing like a gunshot. The third, younger and less experienced, fumbled with a knife. Jack disarmed him with a flick of his wrist, delivering a precise strike to the throat that left the man gasping on the ground. The fight was over in seconds, none of the outlaws landing a hit. Jack zip-tied their hands, his movements methodical, then returned to Sarah, who was struggling to stand. "Easy," he said, supporting her weight as he pulled out his medical kit. He cleaned her wrist, burns, and checked her ribs, painful but not broken. His eyes caught a glint on one of the unconscious biker's fingers, a ring bearing the emblem of the Oakwood Sheriff's Auxiliary. Jack's expression darkened as he slipped it into his pocket. "This wasn't just the outlaws," he said grimly. "Someone official sanctioned this." Sarah nodded, her voice steady despite the pain. "They wanted to scare Muse out of town." The crunch of tires on gravel made them tense. A battered SUV pulled up near the clearing, and Pastor James Carter stepped out, his face etched with worry. The elderly pastor clutched a worn Bible, his eyes scanning the scene. "Sarah, I saw them pull you off the road," he said, voice shaking. "I followed from a distance and recorded it on my phone." He held up the device, showing grainy footage of the outlaws' truck and their wolfy blazoned vests. A teen. Call the sheriff, couldn't trust them. Jack took the phone, his mind racing. Smart move. "This ring says the sheriff's in on it." Sarah leaned against the oak, her strength returning. We need to document everything my injuries. This scene, the ring. Jack nodded, pulling out his own phone to snap photos of the bound outlaws, the ropes, and Sarah's bruises. Pastor? Carter handed Sarah a blanket from his SUV, his hands trembling. This town's been rotting from the inside, he said. Sheriff Dalton's been untouchable for years. Jack's eyes narrowed. Not anymore. As Jack helped Sarah too. The SUV, the distant wail of sirens, cut through the forest. 3 sheriff's cruisers screeched to a stop on the road, deputies spilling out with weapons drawn, hands up. One shouted, though Jack's were already raised, his movements deliberate. Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through. The tension? I'm the victim here. They attacked me. She gestured to her torn scrubs and bruised face. The lead deputy, a stocky man with a smug grin, barely glanced at her. Ma'am, calm down, or you'll be in cuffs too. To Jack's shock, 2 deputies began cutting the zip ties off the outlaws, who stood grinning despite their injuries. Jack Thompson, the lead deputy said, his tone mocking, "You're under arrest for assault and battery." Sarah's outrage boiled over. He saved me. Look at what they did. The deputy's grin widened. Witnesses say your husband started this unprovoked. Stora Carter stepped forward, holding up his phone. I've got video proving otherwise. The deputy's smile faltered, but he snapped. That's evidence. Hand it over. Another deputy snatched the phone, and Jack felt the weight of a rigged system closing in as they cuffed Jack. He locked eyes with Sarah, his gaze steady. My bag, he called as they led him away. Sarah grabbed the go bag, knowing it held tools and evidence they couldn't afford to lose. The outlaws mounted their bikes, one flashing a taunting grin at Sarah as he touched the empty spot where his auxiliary ring had been. She stood tall, her voice clear. This isn't over. The lead deputy paused, his hand on Jack's head as he shoved him into the cruiser. For your sake, it better be. The cruisers pulled away, leaving Sarah and Pastor Carter in the clearing. The oak loomed behind them, its branches swaying in the evening breeze. Sarah clutched Jack's bag, feeling the sheriff's ring in her Paquita small, heavy promise of justice. Pastor Carter placed a hand on her shoulder. Will. Get him out, Sarah. This is just the start. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the fading taillights. The outlaws thought they'd broken her, but they'd only awakened a fight she and Jack would finish together. Back at their modest Oakwood home, Sarah sat on the couch, her body aching but her resolve unbroken. Pastor Carter's wife, Martha, had bandaged her wounds, refusing to let her go to the hospital where Sheriff Dalton's allies might tamper with records. The TV flickered with a local news report, the anchor's voice dripping with bias. Authorities are investigating a violent incident involving a former Special Forces operative, described as unstable by sources close to the sheriff's office. Jack's service photo flashed on screen, alongside footage of the sheriff's cruisers at the scene. Sarah's name wasn't mentioned, her attack erased from the narrative. She clicked off the TV, her hands trembling with fury. In the bathroom mirror, she cataloged her injuries, purple bruises across her cheek, rope burns circling her wrists, a map of pain across her ribs. She photographed each mark methodically, the morning light harsh but honest. 2 hours later, she climbed the courthouse steps with Pastor Carter, her business suit hiding most of the bruises but her face deliberately unmasked. Let them see what they've done. The courtroom buzzed with locals, some supportive church members, others whispering behind their hands. Sheriff Dalton stood near the judge, laughing with a group of businessmen, his confidence unshaken. When he saw Sarah, he tipped his hat with mock sympathy. Terrible business, Mrs. Thompson. Will, sort this out. Sarah's eyes burned, but she held her tongue. The arraignment was swift and one-sided. Charges against Jack assault, disturbing the peace ignored Sarah's attack entirely. The public defender barely glanced at the case file, entering a not guilty plea with a yawn. A new voice broke the monotony. "Your Honor, I'd like to speak." Lieutenant Maria Evans, a state trooper with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. "I'd like to verify the defendant's service record and offer to stand bond." The judge raised an eyebrow, but Dalton's smile twitched. "Unusual, Lieutenant," the judge said. Evans didn't flinch. "As a fellow service member, I'm ensuring due process. The arrest records here raise questions." The courtroom murmured, and Sarah felt a spark of hope. As the judge reviewed the bond request, a woman slipped into the seat beside Sarah. "Lisa Bennett." "Regional Press," she whispered, her notebook open. "Your bruises tell a different story than the sheriff's report. Want to talk?" Sarah studied her sharp eyes, sensing an ally. "Not local?" she asked. Lisa shook her head. "I cover corruption. Something's rotten in Oakwood, and I'm here to dig." The judge granted bond, and Evans signed the papers, freeing Jack for now. Outside, Sheriff Dalton blocked their path, his voice low and menacing. "You and your soldier boy should leave town, Mrs. Thompson. Hate to see more trouble find you." Sarah met his gaze, unflinching. "We're not going anywhere." The sheriff's smile tightened, but he turned away, his boots echoing on the marble steps. Sarah felt the auxiliary ring in her pocket, a small weight carrying the promise of truth. Oakwood wasn't theirs anymore, it belonged to those ready to fight for it. The evening air in Oakwood, Alabama, carried the faint scent of pine and the hum of distant traffic as Sarah Thompson sat at her kitchen table, the weight of the day pressing against her bruised ribs. The auxiliary sheriff's ring, taken from one of her attackers, glinted under the fluorescent light, a tangible piece of the corruption festering in her town. Jack Thompson, freshly released on bond, sat beside her, his calloused hand resting on hers, grounding her in the storm of their reality. Across from them, Pastor James Carter sipped coffee, his weathered face set with determination. The documents from their earlier encounter, photos of Sarah's injuries, screenshots from Pastor Carter's phone footage, were spread across the table like a battle map. Sarah's eyes flicked to the ring, then to Jack. "They're not just random thugs," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "This ring proves the sheriff's office is backing the Iron Ridge Outlaws. We need to know how deep this goes." Jack nodded, his Delta Force instincts already mapping the next move. "We start with who benefits. Someone's pulling the strings, and it's not just Sheriff Dalton." A sharp knock at the door made them all tense. Sarah peered through the peephole, her pulse quickening, then relaxed slightly. It was Lisa Bennett, the investigative journalist from the courthouse. Jack gave a curt nod, and Sarah opened the door, letting Lisa step inside, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "Thanks for trusting me," Lisa said, setting her laptop on the table. "I've been digging since this morning. You're not the first family targeted in Oakwood, and you won't be the last unless we stop this now." She opened a file, revealing a spreadsheet of property sales, each tied to a Black or minority family who'd left town after incidents. Sarah's neighborhood appeared multiple times, marked with dates and suspiciously low sale prices. "This smells like a land grab," Lisa said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Someone's forcing families out to buy cheap, and the sheriff's office is the muscle." Sarah leaned forward, her nurse's precision guiding her as she studied the data. "Who's buying these properties?" Lisa pointed to a column labeled Purchaser. "Shell companies, all of them. But they trace back to one name: Victor Grayson, a real estate developer with deep ties to the county commission. He's been pushing for a logistics hub on the west side of Oakwood prime land, most of it owned by folks like you." Jack's jaw tightened. "So the outlaws scare people out. The sheriff looks the other way, and Grayson scoops up the land for pennies. Pastor Carter set his mug down, his voice low. 2 families from my congregation left last year after their homes were vandalized. They never reported it that the sheriff wouldn't help. Lisa's eyes narrowed. That's the pattern. Intimidation, silence, profit. But we need hard evidence to tie Grayson to the outlaws and Dalton. Sarah's mind raced, landing on the ring. This is a start, she said, sliding it toward Lisa. Official Sheriff's Auxiliary hardware worn by a gang member who attacked me. Lisa photographed it, her camera clicking softly. This could be the thread that unravels everything. But we need more documents, communications, something undeniable. The conversation shifted to strategy. Jack proposed a neighborhood watch, not just for protection, but to gather intelligence. We train people to spot patterns, suspicious vehicles, unfamiliar faces, anything that smells like the outlaws. No weapons, just eyes and ears. Pastor Carter nodded. My church can spread the word. We've got members in every corner of town. Sarah added, I'll talk to the VA nurses. Our patients know the pulse of this community, veterans' families, and elders. They'll know who's been targeted. Lisa tapped her pen against her notebook. I'll follow the money. Grayson's companies have to file public records somewhere. If I can link his payments to the outlaws or the sheriff's office, we've got a case. The plan took shape, a quiet rebellion forming in the Thompson kitchen. But Sarah felt a chill time was not on their side. The outlaws and Sheriff Dalton knew they were exposed, and desperate men were dangerous. The next morning, Sarah drove to the VA hospital, her sedan blending into the morning traffic. Her bruises throbbed under her scrubs, but she moved with purpose, greeting colleagues with a calm smile. During her lunch break, she gathered 3 trusted nurses in the break room, closing the door. I need your help, she said, keeping her voice low. Families in Oakwood are being driven out targeted because of their race. I was one of them. She showed them photos of her injuries, the rope burns stark against her skin. The nurses Maria, a Latina single mother, Jamal, a former Army medic, and Ellen, a grandmotherly figure, listened in stunned silence. We've heard whispers, Maria said finally. Patients talking about harassment, broken windows, threats. We thought it was just a crime. Sarah shook her head. It's organized. The sheriff's in on it, maybe higher. I need you, too. Ask patients discreetly any stories of intimidation, any names tied to the outlaws or property sales. Jamal nodded, his jaw set. My uncle sold his house last month after someone slashed his tires. I'll start with him. Ellen squeezed Sarah's hand. We're with you, Sarah. This stops now. By evening, the Thompsons' living room had become a command center. Pastor Carter brought a map of Oakwood, marking homes of families who'd left under pressure. Jack pinned photos of known outlaws, their faces pulled from Lisa's research, and Pastor Carter's footage. Sarah's phone buzzed with texts from the nurses' names, dates, incidents, forming a chilling pattern. One message stood out. A patient had overheard an outlaw bragging about clearing a street for a big boss named Grayson. Jack's eyes lit up. That's our link. We need to catch them in the act, moving documents, paying off the gang, anything. Lisa hunched over her laptop, looked up. I found something. Grayson's main shell company, Oakwood Ventures, leases a warehouse on the edge of town. It's listed as storage, but the utility bills are sky-high. Someone's working there. Late, Jack leaned over the map. That's 2 miles from the quarry. Perfect spot to hide records. Sarah's heart raced. If they're storing evidence there, they'll move it soon. They know we're on to them. The breakthrough came unexpectedly at midnight. Sarah's phone rang, the caller ID showing an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, Dr. Thompson. A nervous voice whispered, It's Emily Grayson, Victor's daughter. Lisa Bennett gave me your number. Sarah's breath caught. I'm listening. Emily's voice trembled. I work in my father's office. I've seen things ledgers payments to men with wolf tattoos. I can't stay silent anymore. Not after what they did to you. She paused, then whispered, They're moving everything tomorrow night. The warehouse on Quarry Road. Midnight? Sarah's pulse surged. Can you get proof? Emily hesitated. I've got copies, bank transfers, emails. I'll meet you tomorrow, but no one can know it's me. Sarah agreed, setting a rendezvous at a diner on the outskirts of town. As she hung up, Jack's eyes met hers. This is our shot, he said, but it's a trap waiting to happen. The next day, Sarah met Emily Grayson at the diner, a nondescript place with flickering neon signs. Emily, in her late 20s with anxious eyes, slid into the booth, clutching a manila envelope. I've been pretending not to see for years, she said. I'm pushing the envelope toward Sarah. My father calls it business, but it's wrong. Sarah opened it, finding bank statements, emails, and a list of properties her own address. Among them, these show payments to the outlaws through the Sheriff's Auxiliary Program, Emily explained. $15,000 a month to security consultants, timed with every forced sale. Sarah's fingers traced the numbers, each one a family's stolen home. Why now? She asked. Emily's eyes welled up. I saw the news about you. Can't live with this guilt anymore. She handed over a USB drive. Everything's here, digitized. But they're shredding the originals tonight. Sarah nodded, slipping the envelope into her bag. You're doing the right thing, Emily. We'll protect you. Back home, Jack and Pastor Carter reviewed the documents while Lisa cross-referenced them with her findings. The evidence was damning. Grayson's company funneled money through shell accounts to the outlaws with Sheriff Dalton's signature on auxiliary program approvals. This could go to the FBI, Lisa said, her voice electric. But if they destroy the originals, it's our word against theirs. Jack spread the map across the table. We hit the warehouse tonight. Disrupt their cleanup. Secure the evidence. Sarah frowned. It's risky. They'll be armed, and the sheriff's probably watching. Pastor Carter spoke up. My congregation's ready. We've got drivers, lookouts, people who can block roads if needed. No one's alone in this. Jack outlined a plan. A convoy of volunteers, coordinated via radios, would surround the warehouse, using non-lethal tactics to stall the outlaws while Lisa live-streamed the operation to expose them publicly as night fell. Oakwood's backroads buzzed with quiet purpose. 20 vehicles, pickups, sedans, SUVs, gathered in a church parking lot, their engines idling softly. Sarah handed out radios, her voice calm but firm. Hey, stay in pairs, keep your distance, report anything suspicious. We're not fighting, we're witnessing. Jack addressed the group, his military bearing commanding attention. This is about evidence, not revenge. We block their exits, shine lights, and record everything. No one plays hero. Among the volunteers were VA nurses, church members, and veterans, their faces set with resolve. Maria, the nurse, clutched a radio, her eyes fierce. For my son's future, she said. Jamal, the medic, nodded. For my uncle's home. Pastor Carter blessed the group, his voice steady. We walk in truth tonight. The convoy moved out, headlights off to avoid detection, snaking through dirt roads toward Quarry Road. Jack took the rear in a borrowed Jeep, scanning for tails. Sarah rode in the middle, her sedan flanked by 2 pickups driven by veterans. Lisa, in a separate car, tested her live stream setup, ensuring the feed would reach her regional news outlet. The warehouse loomed ahead, a squat metal building half hidden by pines, its lights flickering through grimy windows. Through binoculars, Jack spotted outlaws loading crates into a van, Sheriff Dalton pacing nearby, and a sleek black SUV, likely Grayson's fixer. "They're moving fast," Jack whispered into the radio. Phase 1, go. Volunteers fanned out, silent as shadows. 2 veterans disabled the outlaws' motorcycles, slicing fuel lines with precision. Others set up floodlights, ready to blind the gang when the signal came. Sarah's radio crackled. "All units in position," she said. Jack keyed his mic. "Execute." Floodlights blazed, turning the warehouse yard into daylight. The outlaws froze, shielding their eyes. Jack moved first, tackling a biker from behind, zip-tying his wrists before he could react. Sarah's voice boomed through a megaphone, borrowed from the church. "This is being recorded and streamed live. Drop your weapons." A gunshot rang out, a bullet pinging off a metal crate. Jack dove behind a stack of tires, counting seconds before rushing the shooter, disarming him with a swift strike to the wrist. Lisa's camera captured it all, her feed streaming to thousands online. "This is Oakwood," she narrated. "Families targeted, homes stolen, with the sheriff's blessing. Volunteers held their ground, phones recording every move." Pastor Carter's voice came through the radio. "Police bands lighting up, sheriffs calling for backup, but our people are jamming their dispatch with false reports across town." An outlaw charged Sarah, wielding a crowbar. She dodged, using a wrist-release technique Jack had taught her, sending the man stumbling. Jack was there in an instant, restraining him. Sheriff Dalton drew his sidearm, but volunteers' flashlights pinned him in place, their cameras unrelenting. "You're done, Dalton," Jack called, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The world's watching." The sheriff hesitated, his gun wavering, then dropped it as state police sirens wailed in the distance. Lieutenant Maria Evans, tipped off by Lisa. The outlaws, outnumbered and exposed, began to scatter. But the convoy blocked their exits, tires spiked by volunteers. Grayson's fixer tried to flee in the SUV, but it stalled on a hidden caltrop strip. State troopers swarmed in, cuffing Dalton and the remaining outlaws. Lisa's live stream hit 100,000 viewers, the comments flooding with outrage and support. Sarah stood beside Jack, clutching the USB drive from Emily, her heart pounding with triumph. The warehouse doors hung open, crates of documents, untouched evidence that would bury Grayson's empire. As troopers secured the scene, Sarah looked at Jack, her voice firm. "This is just the beginning." The night air carried the promise of justice, and Oakwood would never be the same. The spring sun bathed Oakwood, Alabama, in a gentle warmth, casting long shadows across Freedom Grove Memorial Park, where the ancient oak tree stood as a quiet sentinel. Sarah Thompson adjusted her simple navy dress, her graying hair swept into a neat bun as she faced a crowd of nearly 200 gathered for the park's dedication. Children laughed on the freshly laid grass, their voices mingling with the chatter of parents and the soft hymns of church elders seated in the front row. Veterans in crisp uniforms stood at attention near the back, their faces etched with pride. Pastor James Carter, now a close friend, sat beside Lieutenant Maria Evans, the state trooper whose intervention had helped turn the tide. Lisa Bennett, the journalist whose expose had sparked a statewide reckoning, positioned her camera crew discreetly to capture the moment for the evening news. Jack Thompson moved quietly among the crowd, ensuring water bottles were distributed and elderly attendees had comfortable seats. His Delta Force precision softened by a newfound ease. Sarah stepped to the podium, her voice carrying a quiet authority. Honed by months of battle not just against the Iron Ridge Outlaws and Sheriff Dalton, but against the fear that had once silenced her town. "Today, we stand where they meant to break us," she began, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "This oak tree was supposed to be a symbol of terror. Instead, it's become our strength, our proof that courage grows stronger than hate." The crowd murmured in agreement, some clutching signs that read, Justice for Oakwood, and we stand together." Sarah gestured to the tree's trunk, where faint scars from the ropes that once bound her were now surrounded by blooming azaleas. They thought they could hide their cruelty in the shadows, but we brought it into the light together. Months had passed since the dramatic night at the Quarry Road warehouse, where Sarah, Jack, and their community allies had thwarted the destruction of damning evidence against Victor Grayson and Sheriff Dalton. The documents, combined with Emily Grayson's testimony and Lisa's live stream, had triggered a federal investigation that rippled beyond Oakwood. The courtroom had been a battlefield of its own, with Sarah and Jack sitting front and center as the Justice Department unveiled a 78-count indictment against Dalton, Grayson, and their network of outlaws. Charges ranged from racketeering to civil rights violations, each count a testament to the families driven from their homes through intimidation. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, emails, the sheriff's auxiliary ring Sarah had clutched that fateful day. Dalton's folksy charm had crumbled under the weight of truth, his guilty plea a hollow whisper in the packed courtroom. Grayson, stripped of his polished suits, had followed suit, his empire collapsing as his daughter's testimony sealed his fate. The judge's ruling was swift: decades in federal prison, with seized assets, funding restitution for displaced families. The auxiliary program, a front for corruption, was dismantled statewide, and Oakwood's sheriff's office faced a federal audit. Sarah had watched Dalton shuffle out in chains, his smirk replaced by a defeated slump, and felt not triumph, but relief. Justice wasn't just punishment, it was the chance to rebuild. Now, at Freedom Grove, Sarah's speech wove together the past and the future. "This park isn't just a place to gather," she said, her voice rising. "It's a promise. Promise that we'll protect each other, that we'll never again let fear dictate our lives." She pointed to the community members who'd fought alongside her. Maria, the VA nurse, now leading a support group for targeted families. Jamal, training young men in de-escalation tactics. And Ellen, organizing senior safety workshops. Pastor Carter's congregation had grown, its members now a network of lookouts and advocates, their church rebuilt with donations from across the state. Jack's self-defense classes, held 3 times a week under the oak shade, had become a cornerstone of Oakwood's revival, teaching teens, seniors, and parents how to carry themselves with confidence, not fear. "We've learned that strength isn't about fighting back alone," Sarah continued. "It's about standing together, watching for each other, refusing to look away." The crowd erupted in applause, and Sarah caught Jack's eye, his quiet nod grounding her as always. The dedication ceremony wasn't just a celebration, it was a call to action. Sarah unveiled a bronze plaque at the oak's base, its inscription simple yet profound: "Justice grows from unity." Children placed flowers around each roses from the Martinez family, now back in their home. Daisies from Robert Lewis's grandson, whose family had reclaimed their property. The crowd sang a spiritual, its melodies swelling with hope, a stark contrast to the fear that had once gripped Oakwood. Lisa's camera panned across the scene, capturing veterans saluting, church mothers embracing neighbors, and teens practicing defensive moves on the nearby lawn. Sarah stepped back, letting Pastor Carter lead a prayer, his voice a steady anchor. "This tree has seen our pain," he said, "but now it witnesses our healing." As the formal event ended, small groups lingered, exchanging contact information and planning neighborhood patrols. The fear that had isolated Oakwood's residents was gone, replaced by a network of trust forged in shared struggle. Later, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah and Jack walked the park's winding paths hand in hand. The gravel crunched under their feet, a comforting rhythm. "Your classes are changing people," Sarah said, nodding toward a group of teens practicing wrist releases under the oak. "That kid, Tommy, he was so shy when he started. Now he's teaching his sister. Jack's lips curved into a rare smile. He's got potential. Reminds me of myself at that age, needed a push to find his voice. They passed a bench where Mrs. Johnson, an 8-year-old widow, sat with other seniors, discussing their latest self-defense lesson. "She's got a mean elbow strike," Jack said, chuckling. "Says it makes her feel 20 again," Sarah laughed. The sound lighter than it had been in months. "The VA's new nurse asked about you today. Wanted to know how you stay so calm under pressure." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What did you tell her?" Sarah's eyes softened. "That calm comes from knowing what you're fighting for and who you're fighting with." Their walk led them to the park's central plaza, where the oak's branches cast protective shadows. Sarah settled onto a bench, Jack beside her, their shoulders brushing. The park was alive with activity. Parents pushed strollers, kids chased. Fireflies and veterans swapped stories near a water fountain. "Lisa called this morning," Sarah said. "Our story's gone national." Okay. 2 other counties are starting their own community watch programs, modeled on ours. Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Good. But it's not just about watching. It's about building, training, organizing, making sure no one feels alone." A young girl approached, clutching a permission slip for Jack's next class. "Mr. Thompson." "My dad says I can join," she said shyly. Jack reviewed the slip with care, his voice warm. "Welcome, Mia. We start with awareness drills tomorrow at 5. The girl grinned and ran off, her ponytail bouncing. Sarah watched her go, a pang in her chest. She's the same age I was when I first felt like I didn't belong here. Now she'd grow up knowing she does. The park's creation had been a community effort, funded partly by restitution and partly by donations from those inspired by Oakwood's stand. The oak, once a site of Sarah's terror, was now surrounded by benches, flower beds, and a small amphitheater where monthly town halls were held. These gatherings, led by Pastor Carter and Sarah, focused on practical steps: how to document harassment, how to report to state authorities, how to support neighbors under threat. The VA nurses had formed a task force offering free health checks. At these meetings, ensuring no one's injuries physical or emotionally went unnoticed. Jamal had started a mentorship program for teens, teaching them to recognize manipulation tactics used by groups like the Outlaws. Even Emily Grayson, now living under a new name in another state, had sent a letter, thanking Sarah for showing her that courage could rewrite a family's legacy. As dusk settled, the park glowed with solar-powered lanterns, their soft light dancing across the oak's leaves. Sarah and Jack lingered, watching families pack up picnic baskets and head home. "Sometimes I think about that day," Sarah said softly, her eyes on the tree. "How they thought they'd scare us into silence. Instead, they gave us a voice." Jack's hand tightened around hers. "They underestimated you. Always will." A group of church mothers approached, their laughter warm as they invited Sarah and Jack to a potluck at the rebuilt First Baptist Church. "Mrs. Martinez is making her famous tamales," one said, winking. Sarah smiled. "We wouldn't miss it." As the mothers walked away, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "FBI just raided another Grayson-linked warehouse. More evidence? You started this." Sarah showed it to Jack, who nodded. "It's not over yet. There's always another Grayson out there." Sarah met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. "And we'll be ready." The evening breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, a reminder of how far Oakwood had come. The park wasn't just a monument, it was a living testament to resilience. Teens practiced self-defense on the lawn, their movements confident under Jack's watchful eye. Seniors shared stories on benches, their laughter a defiance of the fear that once ruled. Parents walked without looking over their shoulders, their children playing freely in the oak's shadow. Sarah thought of the families who'd returned Robert Lewis, now mentoring young entrepreneurs. The Martinezes, hosting community dinners in their reclaimed home. Each story was a brick in Oakwood's new foundation, built not on fear but on unity. As night fell, the park's lanterns cast a warm glow, illuminating the plaque at the oak's base. Sarah traced the words with her finger. Justice grows. From unity, the tree's roots, deep and unyielding, seemed to pulse with the strength of those who'd gathered here. Jack stood, offering his hand. "Time for that potluck," he said, his voice soft but firm. Sarah rose, smoothing her dress, and they walked toward the church, where lights spilled from open windows and the hum of conversation welcomed them. The oak stood tall behind them, its branches swaying gently, no longer a symbol of pain, but a beacon of hope. Where fear had once taken root, love and resilience now flourished. And Oakwood's heart beat stronger with every step its people took. Together,